Okay, I just started the recording, and so I don't want to hold you guys any longer. We may have a few people join in, but I know a lot will be viewing via the recording. So let me just over. Hi, Robin. Hi. Okay, so now can you guys see just the main slide, or do I need to switch it again?
I can see the next one as well.
Okay, so hold on. All right, just one slide?
You bet.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for being my testers. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. We've been, as you guys all know, we've been doing these leader-led trainings a little bit more. We want to make sure that all the leaders, associate designers and above on all of our teams, all of the umbrella teams on Shiny Bits are getting the kind of training that they need. And I know home office provides us with a lot, but we also wanted to be very specific. And you guys all know that we put a post on some of the leader pages and the team pages asking for ideas on trainings that you all wanted to know more about. And so we created a calendar through the rest of the year, at least twice a month for us as leaders to swap and take turns, directors and above, providing different trainings for you. So this was one of the ones that all of you all, some of you are here on the call, but others that are listening in via recording, asked about, and it's actually one that's close to my heart because one of my favorite things about this job is coaching. And I didn't know that was going to be when I first started, but it really has something that's been a favorite thing of mine. Hi, Lindsay. For those of you guys that are on the phone, if you can mute for this part, that'd be great because then we have the feedback. And then towards the end, we'll do a Q&A. But if you have any questions, oh, that's Angela, not Lindsay. You must.
I know. I don't know why it says that. It's because I signed in her account. It must have defaulted to her.
Yeah, that's funny. So we'll do some questions, but if you have any questions along the way, just unmute yourself and go ahead and ask. I'm going to try to keep the training to under 30 minutes because I know we're all super busy, and who's going to watch that kind of thing on a recording anyway. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I know some of you that are going to be listening are going to be new leaders. Some of you have been leaders for a while, but one of the most important aspects of being a leader is coaching. So whether you've got one person on your team or two people on your team or 100 or 500 people on your team, coaching happens the same way no matter what. And oftentimes we start with, well, many times leaders will come to me and say they don't know who they're supposed to be coaching. So I think a good place to start is to make sure that you're coaching the right people. One-on-one coaching can be really time consuming. So me, for example, there's 1,200 people on our full team, Team Shiny Bits. And I personally have 28 first line designers. And a huge amount of leaders all across the board. So I have to be, and all of you should also be, pretty...
Make sure you quickly, you have to leave soon. Don't get that on your shirt.
Somebody needs to mute. Somebody's talking to their little one. You should all be very efficient on how you decide who chooses, who you are able to spend your time coaching. So the first and biggest priority should be your first line designers. When I'm working on coaching, I go immediately to those first line designers and reach out to them specifically to see if they want coaching calls. And not everyone's going to. So don't be stressed about that. If someone doesn't respond to you or isn't interested in it, then don't worry about it. I typically, if they say no, I follow up with them at least once a month to just offer the opportunity each month. But I don't really worry too much about it. The people who want the coaching will, they'll come forth pretty easily and you'll know who those will be regularly. But your first priority should always be those first line designers. And after that, depending on your team, then you should go to other leaders on your team. If there may be someone on a particular leg of your team who has out promoted your first line designer. And I would say feel free to reach out to that person and ask if they're interested in coaching from you. I typically try to involve their mentor always in that first line of communication. I don't ever want to go around a mentor and ask them and coach someone on their downline without permission. So for example, since Lindsay's on the call, Lindsay's not my first line designer. A designer above her named Noelle is my first line designer, but Noelle isn't super active and hasn't promoted above associate designer in a long, long time. So when I first noticed Lindsay being super successful and kind of out promoting Noelle, I messaged Noelle and said, hey, you've got this gal on your team, Lindsay, she's doing great. Would you mind if I reached out to her and coached her, since I know that's not something you really have time for? And she immediately said, of course. And so now I treat Lindsay as one of my first line designers. Noelle isn't interested in coaching from me because she's not really working her business very much, but Lindsay is. So now I treat Lindsay as one of my first line designers. So in those circumstances where there's someone further down your leg that is successful, is a leader, or is the next bullet point an up and comer, then make sure you involve their mentor if at all possible in that process, so that no one feels like they're getting stepped on or walked over. And then that leads me to the next point, which other people who could be coaching are up and comers. So I tend to, I think I was actually just sharing this, I'm sharing this during a coaching call that I was having with Karen. I like to, at least once a week, look at my leg view. So when you're in your team coaching report, there's a tab that says leg view instead of list view. And I love that leg view. And if you're a team of any kind of size, then that's a great way to kind of find people that you might not have seen further down in the report. So I'll look where the leg view is organized by the first person that is your first line designer. You may click down and see people below them that are either have high sales, or maybe they sponsored a couple people, something that stands out that maybe you didn't notice before. So sometimes I'll use that leg view to find any up and comers that I may have missed. So just keep in mind when you're trying to figure out who to coach, first line designers are your biggest top priority. Those are your babies. They're your children. Many of you guys have heard me use that analogy before. I feel like my first line designers are my babies, where second line and third line are more like grandkids and great grandkids. So you want to pick priority by family lineage, basically. And then make sure you always involve a mentor if you're going to coach below that person. And they may want to be involved, they may not want to be involved, and then go from there. So then this is what some of you may have seen this before, but this is one of my favorite things, and I keep this in front of me often when I'm coaching. This is the 5 steps of a coaching conversation. I think a lot of times once we actually schedule that coaching call, then it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? What am I going to do with her once I'm on the phone? And what are we going to talk about? And how's it going to work? And this is just a really, really simple 5-step process that you can use to guide you through your coaching call. It's really, really simple. And once you do it a couple of times, then you kind of get in the habit. And sometimes it'll go off track. Like, if it's someone that I coach often, like Lindsay, for example, then, we may not follow this exactly. We may have one specific issue that we want to talk about or whatever, but this is a great way to start your coaching relationships with your designers once they're kind of out of their jump start and you're not doing the new designer stuff anymore. And this is just a great sort of habit to get into. So the first step would be to build the relationship with her. You've kind of gotten to know her through your new designer training, but continue to build that relationship by leading with her why. I don't do this with every call, but at least every other time I talk with someone, I ask to revisit their why. I think this is a great way for you to stay focused on why she's doing what she's doing. And it's also a great way to get her to focus on what she's doing and why. So leading with their why is a really, really essential aspect to coaching, I believe, because you often will go back to that person's why when they're struggling. If they're feeling down about low sales, you can go back to their why. If they're struggling with hearing a lot of no's, go back to their why. I think we were talking about I forget what the hashtag was, or even who brought it up, but it was something, maybe it was Abby Wood or somebody about no is bigger than my why, or something like that. And I love that saying because that's very true. As long as we stay focused on our why, then it's harder to get bogged down. So great way to start. And then from there, you can kind of go in, hi, Erin. You can kind of go into talking about their goals. So this is just a great way to get a feel for where they are, depending on how often you talk to them. It may not be someone that you talk to every single month. And so it's a good way to say, okay, what are you gunning for this month? Is there a promotion? Is there a certain sale goal that you're looking for, a PQB goal this month? And then what about in the next 90 days? Is there a certain promotion or whatever that may be? That just gives you an idea on how to coach them to what they're trying to achieve. And so I always like to ask people about their kind of shorter term and longer term goals. And then from there, that usually really naturally leads into brainstorming things that need to get done. So when you're talking about their goals, you'll often what will come out of that is what they're struggling with. So maybe they're struggling with booking. Maybe they're struggling with sales. Maybe they're struggling with sponsoring. Those things will probably come out as you're talking about those goals. And then you can move into brainstorming actions about those things that they're specifically challenging with. And it's important that when you're brainstorming that you allow them to do a lot of that thought process. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move into the tips. But I like to kind of lead my designers to solve their own problems, guide them as much as I can, but I also want to make sure that they feel empowered because often they know the answers. They know what they have to do. They know exactly what they should be doing. And it's just talking it through and kind of setting those actions out in front of them. So that's usually a pretty sizable piece of the conversation. And then from there, again, I think it kind of just naturally leads into, all right, well, now what are we going to do? We talked about all these different ideas. What are the ones that I usually will ask them, what are the ones that stand out to you the most? And I'll summarize. Okay, so we talked about sponsoring as a big challenge. And then we talked about these 3 ideas for helping you with sponsoring. Which one will you do this? Which one do you think you can do this week? And then she might say, okay, I think I can create my dream team list. And then you can say, okay, and then whatever I try to keep it down to 1 or 2 challenges just to keep it short term and doable. And then I just make sure I review with her what the challenges are. And then before we wrap up the call, I'll typically end by letting her know that I'm going to follow up with her. And the first time, it's always a good idea to make sure you ask her permission in a way that, she's comfortable with. So you can just say, would it be okay with you if I send you a message, or would you prefer I give you a call in a couple of days to see how you're doing with this, with what we talked about? And then she'll typically say yes or no, and you can kind of get a feel for how she prefers to be contacted, and then you can move forward with that follow-up. So it's just a really simple 5 steps to guide your conversation with your designers and your leaders to help them kind of work through anything that they're dealing with. This is something that I keep in front of me all the time, so it's a good thing to kind of have on hand. So moving forward, I just had a few things that I do that have worked really well for me and that I've learned from other Keep leaders and home office teams that I wanted to share with you guys before we wrap up with Q&A. So first, when it comes to coaching, I think a big tip is keeping track. If any of you, I don't think Erin was, but anybody who was at Director Summit, I actually was on a panel and I shared this. This is my coaching binder that I use to keep track of all the designers that I coach. So inside this binder, I have a picture of that slide that I just showed you, but this is from Director Summit, so it's that 5 steps. I have that right in the front, so same 5 steps that I just shared with you. I just keep it in front so that when I'm opening my binder to coach someone, I have those in case I forget the steps or need to refer back to them. And then after that, I just have, you can see just tabs. Erin, I think you happen to be right in the, oh no, that's Nicolina. Erin's number 3. I have tabs for each person that I coach. And then behind that tab is just, well, in this case, a document, and I can post this document for you guys. This is a document that I created called 2016 Goals and Aspirations. And so I sent this at the beginning of the year to everyone all my first line designers and any of the leaders that I was coaching. And I asked them to fill it out and respond back to me. A lot did, but a lot didn't. But it was a document that asked what's their why, talked about their goals by the end of January, by the end of March, by Hoopla, and by the end of the year. Asked about how many designers they would like to have, how many socials they want to book each month. And then if they have a team built already, what are their goals as a leader? So I have that as the front. And then after that is just lined paper. So then I keep track of all my coaching calls with that person during the year on lined paper. So it's just a really nice way to keep track of everybody. And it's been useful for me. And it might be a tool that might be useful for you as you find yourself coaching more. But you can come up with a system that works for you too. If it's just a special coaching notebook where you write down each time you talk to a person, you have that there because obviously follow-up is really, really important. And so I even will, I'll write down, after I talk to that person in the notes, I'll write down what our action items were. And then I'll put in my Outlook calendar, I'll put a reminder to follow up with that person a few days later. So like Erin and I had a coaching call. Was that 2 weeks ago now? And then I put in my Outlook I think it was about 4 or 5 days later to follow up with her. And so I just sent her a message via Facebook to see how she was doing on some of the things that we talked about. She hasn't responded to me yet, though. So she's going to get another message. But anyway, that's helpful for me because I'll forget, to follow up with people. So I try to keep it in my Outlook and keep track of it via binder. And then another lesson that I learned from Danielle Redner, which I love, is to push people beyond what's reasonable. I have learned through this business that the moment someone realizes that you believe in them, they start to believe in themselves too. And that's really what my why revolves around. I do this business because I love the moment when I realize that someone is believing in themselves because others believed in them. And I think that often we underestimate ourselves on what we can do. And so I feel like it's my job as a coach to safely push a designer a little further than what she thinks she can do, because every single time she usually accomplishes it. So I like to always keep that in my mind. Push beyond what's reasonable, but not too far. There's a balance, and you'll get to know people as you coach them too, and what you can get away with and what you can't get away with. And then another great one that I learned from Danielle was don't offer suggestions until she's done. Often when we're coaching, it's so easy to just kind of, and I'm not great at this, and I've been working on it. It's so easy to kind of just sort of spill out all of this experience that you have, but that's not as valuable to your designer and as it would be for you to help kind of guide it out of her. Because then at the end of the call, she, instead of feeling like, oh wow, she just told me a whole bunch of information and I'm overwhelmed and I don't know what to do, at the end of the call, then she'll feel more like, wow, I can do this. These are my ideas and I can do them. So I think it just gives a designer a bit more empowerment if you can try to hold back on your suggestions and really guide her along the process instead of just telling her what to do. And I just wanted, the last slide is also something that Danielle Redner said, which I love, and just an important point to keep in mind, that coaching is not teaching. We're not, when we do our coaching sessions, we're not necessarily teaching someone how to do something. We're guiding them on how to do something that they really already know how to do. Yes, you'll be answering questions, and sometimes you will need to teach, especially when they're new, but often a coach is a support mechanism, someone to provide inspiration, someone to bounce ideas off of, and many times at the end of my coaching calls, somebody will end by saying, I knew what I needed to do, I just needed to talk it through. And a lot of times when I have coaching calls with my mentor, who's Vicki Berkowitz, that's how I usually end the call too. Oh, I knew I needed to do that. I just needed to talk it through. So those are my tips on coaching. I hope you guys will find them beneficial. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts about coaching or questions about anything that I said?
Hi, I do have a quick question for you. Is there anywhere that I can go to find out how to read the reports properly?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. Actually, we have a training. We will be doing a leader-led training on that. I think Lindsay's doing it, and I don't know the date off the top of my head. But you're right. There's not really a great document or a training that already exists that I'm aware of in the hub that really explains how to use reports, which is why we're going to do one. Even I know how I use them, but I'm sure that other leaders use them in different ways. And so I'm looking forward to the training too, because I think I might learn a few new things as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions? Okay.
I think that training, oh, sorry, Charlene. I was just going to say, I think that training that I'm doing is October 26th.
Okay. So that's at the end of the month. So that's not too long of a wait, Erin. Thanks, Lindsay. Any other questions from anybody? Okay. I am, thank you all who joined in the call, and I will post the recording for sure. So if you have anybody on your teams that you want to share it with, feel free to do that. I'm going to post the recording on the Shiny Bits leader page, and then I'm sure the other leaders will post it on their pages as well. And hopefully it can be a beneficial tool. So thanks to all that called in, and thanks to everyone who's taken time to listen if you're listening to this after the call. And hopefully these coaching tips will help you coach your designers in reaching their goals.
Thank you, Charlene.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.